Hey, sister, this is Misty Williams, founder of HealingRosie.com, and I'm so excited to welcome you to Rosie Radio. Tune in to find clarity, direction, and hope for your healing. New episodes drop every Tuesday. We created this show to empower you to regain control of your life and feel like yourself again. Yes, sister, it is possible. Oh boy, I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with my friend Michelle, who I have brought into the Healing Rosie community to serve our community at large. Many of you know that I launched Healing Rosie in 2018 to support women dealing with flabby, foggy, and fatigued, figuring out how to navigate the healing journey. And you followed my journey to getting my life back and my quality of life back. You know, that's really what I feel like I've done is I've gotten my quality of life back. And one of the frustrating experiences that I've had as I've traversed this new role really in my life of having a community of women is watching you guys play whack-a-mole working with your practitioners, right? First of all, finding a practitioner can be challenging and confronting. If you're working in the conventional medical model, mainstream medicine, getting them to even acknowledge that your symptoms can be helped with something other than pharmaceuticals, right? Can be its own challenge. But I've also watched women working with practitioners and doctors who call themselves functional medicine or integrative medicine or naturopathic medicine doctors or practitioners and continue to struggle, right? Maybe they'll see some slight improvement in their symptoms, move it on a scale of 1 to 10, their exhaustion, 10 being like, I'm dead from exhaustion. Maybe they go from a 9 to a 7, right? So you're not as exhausted as you were, but you still know that there's miles to go. I'm witnessing that a lot. You see it in the Healing Rosie Facebook group. If you're active in our Facebook group, a lot of women coming in, needing support, sharing the frustrations they have with their practitioners and doctors. And so what I wanted to do for this interview today is I want to actually walk you through the framework that we're going to be using in the accelerator, including the lab tests that we're running, because knowledge is power. And when you're working with your doctor, you're at the mercy of what they tell you needs to be done to help you figure out your situation, right? And it can be maddening when they do what they tell you they can do, and you're still not feeling better, and there's no more answers. I don't know what else to do. Or you can just tell by the way they're treating your case that they don't have another track to take you on. So if you know what labs are part of a great healing protocol, it puts you in the driver's seat, right? So that you can look for practitioners who have experience with those labs. It's not enough just to run the lab. That can be hurdle 1, right? I need to run these labs. But hurdle 2 is I don't only need to run the labs, but I need someone that knows how to interpret these labs. So part of the vetting process really is asking these practitioners if they have experience with certain labs or conditions. So I remember Val I think her name is Val, in the Healing Rosie Facebook group, was really struggling with gastrointestinal issues. And all year last year, she was going back and forth between her conventional doctor wants her to do this and her functional doctor wants to do this. And so she would kind of go between and try a little bit of the functional stuff and then go back and try a little bit of the conventional stuff. Nothing was helping. She continued to have new symptoms presenting. It was getting really scary for her. And I remember messaging her privately saying, you need to find another doctor. Whoever you're working with, neither one of these people are helping you. You need to find another doctor. And I really suspected in her case that she was dealing with some deep toxic stressors, maybe some mold, maybe some mouth infections. So she needed to work with someone that actually knew how to identify those conditions, right? If your practitioner does not know how to identify mold toxicity and you have it, you will be undiagnosed, untreated, right? So a big part of the challenge that we're dealing with trying to find a practitioner is people that actually have the education to go deep enough with us to help us break through, right? So she reached out to 10 functional medicine doctors in her area. 2 of the 10 knew how to run the mold testing and then write a protocol for her if it came back positive. 2 out of 10 functional medicine doctors. So imagine if she would not have vetted her practitioner with, hey, are you able to do this kind of testing and write protocols for these kinds of conditions? My experience has been that if a practitioner knows how to deal with deep toxic stressors, that means they've gone deeper with their education, and they can typically help you with some of the foundational things, and they can help you with the deeper stuff. If they don't know how to do the deeper stuff, to tell, right? That they've not really gone very far with their functional training. And I'm not saying they can't provide some value, but I know what the women in our community are looking for, right? We want someone that's going to be able to go the extra mile with us and help us resolve these issues. So I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. We're going to peel back the curtain, talk to Michelle about the labs that we're running for the women who join us in the accelerator. And I just want you to understand what it looks like when someone puts a great protocol together for you and is able to take you deeper. Okay. So that's the big takeaway. I want everyone to get clarity. This whole conversation is meant to empower you around your own journey to properly advocate for yourself, to maybe take this information and compare it to the experience you're having with your practitioner. Maybe give you some insight into what you need to look for. Maybe you need to go back to the practitioner you have and say, hey, here's where I want to go, right? This is what I want to achieve in my journey, and enroll them in taking you deeper. Perhaps they can, and they're just not taking very much initiative with you, right? So this conversation is going to be fabulous. So I found Michelle because I decided that what we needed for the accelerator was someone who was trained in by Reed in his functional diagnostic nutrition. If you listen to the podcast, you may remember the podcast episode I did a few weeks ago with Reed. He is the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, and he has built a graduate level program teaching people how to use lab work and protocols to heal the body. And I know a lot of chiropractors and medical doctors, clinic owners who all have enrolled in Reed's course because he goes deeper than they do at the Institute of Functional Medicine, right? He goes deeper than all of that. And he's very holistic in how he views healing the body. And he teaches not only the biology and chemistry that's important to healing, but he also teaches reading the labs and putting together protocols that are going to address the body holistically and look for the healing opportunities so that women can heal. So I know women who have gone to an FDN. I think FDNP might be the designation if you're looking at letters after names, and been able to get a lot of their life back, and I know that Reed is very, very well respected in our space by the practitioner, health expert, health entrepreneur community. And so I spoke with him in June. I myself have enrolled in his program. I will not be taking care of people in our community one-on-one, but I wanted the education so that I could be a good leader. And I wanted to bring in someone who has been through his program and has in the trenches experience working with women, doing these protocols and helping them heal. So I found Michelle, and she has an awesome background. In fact, Michelle, why don't you just tell us a little bit about why you decided to become an FDN and your background in using this framework to help people get their lives back?
Like many of you, my own health journey, brought me here. Before this, I was a paralegal for 16 years. I taught high school English for 10 years, but I was really struggling, and the medical community failed me utterly. It was an absolute failure. There are good points to it, right? If emergency
if you break your arm,
things, right? Please, take me to the hospital. But when it comes to preventive chronic conditions, it really is just an utter failure. And if they failed me, and I had a doctor fire me. So it was at that point I had to.
It's a rite of passage.
Yes, I know it was. It was excellent. It was the best thing that ever happened, really, because I was forced at that point to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And that's when I, as a learner, someone who loves to learn and research, I started my journey, going down all of the rabbit holes. So here I am now.
Yeah.
And, once I figured out how to help myself and just loved it, I fell in love with it, the work and helping people. And so here I am.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I loved about Michelle is she not only has a good understanding of the FDN framework, for healing the body, this great functional nutritional framework, but she's actually gone really deep with her training into a variety of different kinds of labs and tests. Her acumen around reading blood labs and identifying what's really going on just with your blood labs is pretty astute. And she and I put our heads together and decided what we wanted to do for the women who were joining us in the accelerator. I want to review the list of labs that we are going to do for every woman that comes with us. But what's important about this is I want you guys to understand how a comprehensive foundational framework using labs, because we really do need the labs, you guys. We need to know what's happening in our bodies. Using the labs, how you can put together a really great framework to help the body heal. And we're actually going to talk about we'll go through the labs, and then I'm going to also explain to you what goes into the healing protocol. So this information is meant to empower you so that you can take a look at what you're doing and see where you have opportunities to up your game, right? Work with your practitioner. If you want to apply to join the accelerator, you're certainly welcome to do that. But ultimately, I want all of you to know what it looks like, because we don't, right? And that's why we lose. This is why I lost 10 years of my life not living optimally, because I was working with practitioners who would make a contribution, right? But they couldn't take me all the way, and I had no idea what it looked like. If I would have known, oh, I'm looking for someone that can do this, right? Like, how could I have made decisions differently a decade ago, 5 years ago? So yeah, this is going to be awesome. So here's what we're doing. Here's the labs that we're running. We are going to run blood labs. It's a big list. Can't go over it now. Just if you're interested in learning about labs, we have the Healing Rosie lab tracker on the website. Go to healingrosie.com. You can download the lab tracker. It's free. We have the optimizing labs listed there, and we have their optimal values. So you not only get the labs, but also what are the optimal values and what might it mean if they're high or low, right? It's a tool that you can look for yourself, try to make sense of what you're seeing in the labs. And then you can take that to your practitioner and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. What do you think about this, right? Get some help, but it's meant to empower you. So we're going to do a full blood workup, and we are also going to run the hair tissue mineral analysis. So I recently did a podcast with Barton Scott, where we really went into this more. We actually looked at my hair tissue mineral analysis results. Am I saying that right? Am I getting it backwards? Yes. HTMA. That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we looked at my results, and I shared a lot of what I learned. Now, I wish to God I would have known that a foundational part of healing, period, doesn't matter what you're dealing with, is optimizing your minerals. Now, of course, we talk about how important magnesium is and potassium. So go take it. That's not optimizing your minerals. Until you actually measure what's happening in your own body, you will really not know if first of all, if your minerals are low somewhere, if the stuff that you're taking is actually getting your minerals where they need to be. The next test we're going to do is the Dutch. You guys know we've talked a lot about the Dutch test in our community. We talked about it in the Healing Rosie Facebook group. I've interviewed Dr. Sean. We talked a little bit with Dr. Sean about the Dutch test. If you've been in Healing Rosie University, we actually have a lot of training around the Dutch test, but the Dutch test is a urine test that measures your hormones, that gets measured at several points throughout the day and even overnight if you wake up to pee in the night. And we learn how your hormones are functioning. We learn how your estrogen is converting, if it's going down toxic pathways or not.
To me, that is beautiful. I love that, because when we determine whether or not it's going down the more carcinogenic pathway, we're not stuck with that. We can actually move it, into the more protective pathway. But you have to know.
Yeah, it's really empowering to know. Another thing that I love about the Dutch is it measures your melatonin too. So you can see do you have enough melatonin in your system to fall asleep and then stay asleep throughout the night. So it's a good indicator, especially if people are working on their sleep. I think it shows some methylation stuff. There's lots of good stuff in the Dutch. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as this interview progresses. But we're going to do the Dutch test. Then we're going to do the GI map. It's a gut test to see how our guts are doing, what we need to do. There's a few givens. We know that people are probably going to have low good bacteria levels, right? And they probably have leaky gut going on and a few other things, but we want to run the Dutch test. And we are going to run the oat test, organic acids test. The oat test is where we started seeing that I had fungus and mold issues. I had really low neurotransmitters when I did the test last year before I got my mold diagnosis. There's lots of great stuff that you can find out about the oat test. But what we want to do is get a picture of what's happening holistically in your body and use all this information to inform that protocol that you initially get put on. Okay. So before we go into that piece, I want to spend some time with Michelle talking about each one of these tests and how she uses them to inform her protocols, with the intention of you guys take some good notes here so that you've got a good frame of reference so that you can successfully advocate for yourself with your practitioners, right? So let's start with blood labs. Start at the beginning. What are the things you're looking for in blood labs?
I'm looking at cholesterol. That's really important. And if your cholesterol's high, if your LDH is high, which is the transport, not only is it a liver issue, but it's probably also a thyroid issue, because we need T3 to convert all of that. And so looking at a full thyroid panel and not just TSH or even just TSH and T4, I want to see what your free T3 is and your total T3 and your reverse T3. That tells me a lot about what's happening inside your cells. Cholesterol, again, help. It also gives me a good idea of what's going on in your liver, because we can change that. And we can do it without medication. So a lot of inflammation markers. I'm also looking for, when I look at the white blood cell count and all of the different types of white blood cells, so neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils, I can tell and see, depending on where you are, whether or not you have a bacterial, a fungal, viral, or a parasitic infection. Because oftentimes parasites don't show up on a GI map, but I can tell through those values which ones are, if your body's fighting those types of low-grade chronic infections. It doesn't mean you're going to be sick, with the fever, with all these things. It just means that these are low level, they're chronic. Your immune system is just constantly
stressed by them,
stressed out by it. And so we can see, and doctors look at it and they go, oh, you're fine, but it's not. It's really not fine. Again, we look at, I noticed this week, and you may not realize this, but every year, once a year, labs update their value ranges based on results from the prior year. So every year, their reference ranges get more broad. And one marker I noticed in a test yesterday, it just changed because, just a few weeks ago, the test results came back and they were the old value. They've updated their value by 5 points. 5 points, that's a lot. And so we want to, again, like Misty said, we want to look at it at a more functional range. But we have to watch that because doctors aren't really paying attention to that. They're just, okay, well, this is, they probably don't even notice that the values are increasing over time. Definitely want to look at, all your red blood cells. If they're too high, that indicates, some B vitamin issues. If they're too low, obviously iron issues, just a lot of other different inflammation markers. So there's just a lot of really good information that we can get from there.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty awesome when you're working with a great practitioner who can see infections in your blood work, because that's not a linear part of reading labs, right? There's not a parasite lab.
Right. I think there actually is a company that is actually, that's all they do.
From blood work?
Not in blood work. It's a stool test, but it's not the GI map.
Right. Yeah. But, I'm just saying there's not a parasite blood lab.
No.
You take. So you, generally speaking, you just need to have the acumen. You need to work with someone that knows how to identify those infections in your blood, right? Because if you can see it in the blood work, then you can do something about it. Part of the challenge that we're dealing with when we look at the conventional framework is that first of all, most conventional doctors really don't know and understand blood work. I remember the primary care doc that I went to after my surgeries when I'd experienced 6 months of just exhaustion and fatigue, and I was an emotional basket case. So much brain fog. I remember begging her to run labs, and finally she was so exasperated with me. I can be very persistent if you can't feel it in my energy. But she finally said to me, Misty, even if I did run your labs, I wouldn't know what they meant, which was stunning. I remember just feeling like stunned. I didn't even know what to say. Like, what do you mean? I had this belief, this perception, right? That if I'm going to my doctor, they go through all these years of medical school training, 8, 12, 16 years, depending on what their disciplines are. And they don't know how to read blood labs. So, you can't assume that just because someone has been conventionally trained that they know anything about blood work. But even still, a lot of what they learn with blood is looking for advanced states of disease. It's a very different lens than looking at your blood work and seeing, are you optimal? Right? Is everything healthy and functioning well? So yeah, blood labs are important. All right, let's move on to HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis test.
Like Misty said, minerals are foundational. If we can't get those balanced, then all the rest of what we're trying to do is not really going to work very well. So it's very foundational. The HTMA is a very nuanced test, depending on whether, what your metabolism rate is. And it's not necessarily metabolism, like how fast you metabolize food, but your metabolic rate. How do you hold on to things? Does your body release things? It depends on what your rate is. There are ratios that give us windows into what are your adrenals doing? What is your thyroid doing? How's the blood sugar affecting your minerals? So there are the different ratios we can see. We can see if you have an iodine deficiency. We can see if you have copper toxicity. When we look at, there's not a marker necessarily for copper toxicity, but when we look at it, a number of the different ratios. And if you have these that are elevated or low, then you likely have copper toxicity. And that either means it's bio unavailable to your body or you have too much. So it's a very, very nuanced test, and there's so much information in it, and we can't address everything right away. right? So we've got to balance those first four primary minerals: your calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. Do you have a calcium shell? Do you have too much calcium? Should be in your bones, not in your tissues. So if you do, then we have to work on that. We have to break that up. There's so many. It's just such a beautiful test, and we can gather so many things from it that it's hard to even describe it all. Really,
yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, I have a whole podcast about this. If this test is interesting to you, just go listen to the podcast I did with Barton. But we can also see if you're excreting metals. There's several ways to measure metals in the body, and how you excrete them through your tissues is one way.
And if you have really high levels, especially for someone who's a slow oxidizer, then that's a really good indication that you need to do some further testing. To see, your metals, because I've had that happen, slow oxidizer, but her metals were like literally off the charts. And so it's like, okay, you have a lot of heavy metals in your body. So it kind of points to what else do we need to look at and what else do we need to do? And it's a process. We can't do all of it. We can't fix everything all at one time. Our bodies just won't handle it. So it gives us a roadmap.
Yeah. The important things about minerals is you can't balance your hormones without balanced minerals. You can't detoxify well without balanced minerals. So this means we can do things to artificially prop up, right? We can do things to force the body, but we are not putting the body in an optimal state, right? To get rid of the toxins that are in our system or to bring our hormones fully into balance, right? So yeah, that's the hair tissue mineral analysis. Let's move on to the Dutch.
Love the Dutch. Again, like I mentioned earlier, one of the beautiful things I love about it is we can see that those estrogen metabolites, what pathways are they going down? Are they going down? There's 4-OH, the 2-OH, the 16-OH, and we want to make sure it's going down the more protective pathway. We can look and see your ratios. The Dutch test is important if you're cycling, that we test on days 19 through 21 for a 28-day cycle. Otherwise, it's going to give skewed results. So that's a real important piece to keep in mind when you get ready to test. Cortisol, what's your diurnal pattern doing? What's your rhythm? Why aren't you sleeping at night? Is it because your cortisol is raising up too high at nighttime? How much are you producing? How much is free in your body to be utilized? If you don't have enough, then you're not making DHEA. And what's your testosterone doing? Are you more androgenic? We can even, between that and some of the blood work, we can determine whether or not you have things like insulin resistance and PCOS, and then be able to deal with those things. And again, it looks at some B vitamin markers. It looks at some neurotransmitter markers, some oxidative stress markers, and the melatonin. And melatonin is not just for sleep. A lot of the processes in our body require melatonin to work. So it's a really important hormone, melatonin is. So we get good measurement on those levels. And it just, methylation, how well are you? That's a big word. Does everyone know what that means? It has to do with
you should explain it.
It happens in every cell all the time, all day long. And it really is how well the body is moving things around and how well you're able to detoxify. And so if your body's struggling, if your cells are dirty, if your cells are dirty, your receptors are dirty from toxins, then your body's not going to be able to move things around. You're not going to be able to get rid of your estrogen. Estrogen is a use it, then lose it hormone. And estrogen dominance is not about having too much estrogen. It's not that your ovaries are overproducing estrogen. It's your cells, receptor sites are dirty, too many toxins. And when we have too many estrogenic toxins in our body, so we can get that from our beauty and skincare, we can get that from it's on our foods and the things we spray around us, and all of those things, they mimic estrogen, and so they get on that receptor cell site, and the real estrogen can't get in to the cell, and because it hasn't been used, it just continues to circulate in the body, and then the liver is toxic, and it can't get rid of it either, and so it creates this estrogen dominance where you have too much estrogen circulating in your system, gives you all those horrible symptoms. And so we can see all of those things on the Dutch test, which is just beautiful.
I want to add a little color commentary to that just to help you guys connect a little bit more with methylation. When I had my mysterious 45-pound weight gain in 2013, I was doing all the things right. I was eating paleo, working out with a trainer. I had hardwired my house, so no Wi-Fi in my house. I had gotten the meters and measured everything. I got rid of all the chemicals, all the things. And I gained 45 pounds in 3 months, and it was super scary. I mean, that's a lot. I'm 5'2". That's a lot of weight. And I did a Genova complete hormone test, which is very similar to the Dutch, and measures methylation. And my methylation was 0. I was not methylating at all. So the weight gain for me happened because I wasn't methylating. But why wasn't I methylating? I did not figure that out until 2018, where I connected the dots on that on my own. Nobody ever asked. No one seemed to care, right? Connected the dots on my own and realized that, I had mercury fillings drilled improperly from my teeth. I didn't know what proper or improper looked like, right? But by then I'd learned. And the heavy metals in my system, talk about gunking up your cells and your receptor sites. Yeah, I was trashed and wasn't methylating at all. And that's what created the weight gain. So yeah, methylation is very important.
It's very important.
Very, very important. All right. Let's move on to the GI map.
GI map. So there are 3 types of bacteria in your gut. There's beneficial bacteria, opportunistic bacteria, and commensal bacteria, which are neutral. And when in a healthy gut, when the beneficial bacteria are greater in number than the opportunistic have a job. They need to be there. So things like E. coli and C. diff and strep, we have a small number of those things in our gut and they're important and they're supposed to be there. But when there's the number of beneficial bacteria have decreased, then the opportunistic bacteria rise. And that's when we get all of the problems and things that we have, and then candida overgrowth and all these things. So we can look at all of the major types of bacteria to see whether or not they're imbalanced, if we have too much or not enough. Sometimes parasites show up. It does look for parasites. It looks for worms. It looks for Epstein-Barr virus. It looks for cytomegalovirus and a few other things. And it also looks at some intestinal markers. So D-glucuronidase is another liver marker, right? How well are you methylating? How well are you detoxifying? Which pathway, which phase of detoxification is impaired? It looks at that. It looks at some pancreatic markers. How well is your pancreas functioning? Is it struggling? As well as your immune system markers. So how well is your immune system working? Is it low? Is it high? Is it overworked? So it gives a lot of really good information as to what's going on in the gut.
Yeah, you'll see things like H. pylori.
H. pylori, yes, thank you.
Yeah, other significance. SIBO, I believe it will measure.
You can look at, it doesn't measure SIBO on the GI map, but you can look, depending on which markers are out of range, it may indicate that you might have SIBO. You would have to get a breath test to actually get positive for that.
Yeah, confirm. That's right. Okay. All right, let's go to the OAT.
OAT stands for organic acid test. So back to those minerals and vitamins, all of the biochemical processes in our body require vitamins and minerals to do their jobs. And the OAT test is it's one of those very nuanced type of tests. And so we can look at the different cycles in the body, like the Krebs cycle and oxalates and mold. And it gives us a really good picture of if something's imbalanced. We can look to vitamins and minerals to see which ones are missing, if something's too high or something is too low. It also looks at what else? Just the Krebs cycle, the carbohydrate cycle. How well are you processing and digesting your carbohydrates? What's going on? Are you creating all these metabolites from that? And so it just gives us another good window into how well is the body doing its job.
Yeah. Measures all your neurotransmitters too. See what's happening with your neurotransmitters. My OAT test, that's where we saw the fungus and
yes,
mold.
You can. Oftentimes, it doesn't show up on the GI map. Fungus, candida is really hard to detect. It often doesn't show on the GI map, but it will show up on the OAT.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why we want to do both tests, right? Not just one. The OAT test is where I started feeling, all the other tests that we were taking. It's not that my test results were perfect, but they weren't necessarily indicating what's really going on at a deeper level. In my case, my insulin resistance went through the roof, and we saw some things in my markers that were new, right? Like what's really happening in Misty's body. But all we knew was that something was off. Oh, we got some extra inflammation going on, but it wasn't until we did the OAT that we started zeroing in. Okay, this is fungus and likely mold that she's dealing with here, right? So. And without
huge,
without knowing, then you don't do the right things for treatment. And I have a lot that I need to get cleared out of my system. I've been working on it now for a whole year, clearing this stuff out of my system. And it's very common for that journey to take 2 or 3 years. And I wish I would have started last summer with balancing my hormones, because I probably would have had a more successful year for detoxing. I just would have detoxed more because it's such an important part, but I didn't learn that little bit of trivia until earlier this year. So this is why I want you guys to have this information, right? Because I know what it's like to be advocating for yourself and to be looking for a practitioner that can help. But if you don't know, what it looks like to put together a good plan and to measure well and to go deep, then how do you know if the practitioner you're working with is really helping you, or how do you encourage them to go deeper? The practitioner that I've been working with, I love her. She's always been very cooperative and very supportive. And that's the word. She's not been a leader for me. She's been supportive. So as I've come to the table and said, I want to figure this out and go deeper, right? We got to figure out why can't I lose these 18 pounds? There's something off, something is wrong. So she supported me by saying, all right, let's do some deeper tests. She did not initiate and say, all right, Misty, I'm looking at this. You've been struggling with this weight now for a couple of years. We need to figure out what's going on. I wish, right? But it's just not how it works. So anyway, so these are the 5 labs. Here's what's going to go into the protocols that we create. And I want you guys to understand this piece too, because then you can start evaluating if the protocols that you're on are checking these boxes, right? You can go back to your practitioner or doctor and say, hey, are we doing enough for my liver and gallbladder? How's that looking? Are we really addressing that? I'm concerned about that piece. So first thing that we're going to do is rebalance minerals. Part of the protocol, we're going to rebalance minerals. We're going to clear out infections. So we're going to look at all the results here and see what are the infections that we have going on. We're going to get those cleared out. We are going to start healing the gut, right? We are going to open those detox pathways and start preparing the liver and gallbladder to support clearing the infections and getting rid of the other toxins that show up. And then we are going to balance our blood sugar. We could probably do a whole podcast episode just on blood sugar. It plays such a significant role in the whole health picture. It's the disease picture really that blood sugar plays.
Right. If you don't get your blood sugar balanced, you're never going to balance your thyroid hormones or your sex hormones, steroid hormones. You're just not.
All of it. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And then we are going to work on priming the parasympathetic. If we are stuck in sympathetic all the time, we are screwed. Nothing else is going to work. All this time and energy that we're spending on our protocols, right? Spending on doctors, going and doing the sauna visits and having the sauna put in at your home. If you are not getting out of sympathetic, chronic, overstressed state all the time, moving into parasympathetic, then you are not going to heal. And then of course, sleep, because you guys know how I feel about sleep. Sleep is the most important thing that we do.
It is.
Right. You're not sleeping, you're not healing. You're going to hear me say it a million times.
Well, our liver detoxifies at night, and there are a lot of other things that happen while we're sleeping. And if we're not sleeping, those things aren't happening.
Yeah.
Our brain detoxifies at night. It's called the lymphatic system.
Yes.
And so, if you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's your liver. It's probably a blood sugar issue because your liver needs blood sugar to detoxify. And so, your body's not doing what the healing work, and it's not repairing itself if you're not sleeping. So it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of these things are an important part of a good health protocol. But anyway, all of this together makes up a complete protocol. Now there is another step after this, right? This is where we start, and it will take at least 90 days. Some of this stuff takes 6 months or more to bring the body back up to, a foundational level where we can actually do the deeper healing work. Right. But we've got to bring a lot of things into balance. In addition to a good protocol, I encourage everyone to go out there and work with a doctor on your hormones, get that hormonal support that you need right now so that you're able to sleep, so that your body's able. Our bodies use hormones for so much. And if we don't have hormones, it slows down healing. That's the simplest way I know to communicate that. It slows down healing. So if you are a woman in perimenopause or menopause, you should be working with someone on your hormones. And that's a different piece to this, right? Can you optimize your hormones? Yes. Can you get your hormones back up to the optimal levels? Maybe, maybe not, especially if you're in menopause, right? So I feel like you have something to say about that, Michelle.
Yes. Menopausal, perimenopausal, and menopausal women. This goes back to the sleep piece. Once your ovaries are no longer producing estrogen, your adrenal glands pick up, and what little bit of estrogen you have, unless you're taking, bioidentical hormones, your adrenal glands have to pick up and produce a little bit of estrogen that you do have. And if your adrenals are tanked and you're not sleeping and you're stressed all the time, then they're not going to be, they're not going to produce any estrogen. So that's why sleep is important. Getting back into that parasympathetic dominant state most of the time is important. Not depleted, because that can show up on the HCMA, whether or not you're in that parasympathetic and you're so far into it that your body's just completely depleted and can't do anything. But really working to take care of your adrenal glands so that they will serve you well, well into menopause.
If you are listening and interested in joining the Healing Rosie, University Accelerator, where we're going to be diving deep with Michelle. It's a 6-month program where we're doing so much cool stuff. All these labs, we're also, we're going to all wear continuous glucose monitors for a month together, measure our blood glucose. It's going to be awesome. Really see how sleep impacts our blood glucose, our diet impacts our blood glucose, exercise impacts, see what your body is good at processing and what it's not. There's a really excellent book by Rob Wolf called Wired to Eat, where he really goes into the nitty gritty on how to optimize your own diet based on how your body manages glucose. It's wonderful. He actually teaches you how to do it by pricking, getting a meter and just pricking, doing a test strip, which you can definitely do if you don't want to get a continuous glucose monitor. We're going to wear the monitors and see what's happening, over an extended period of time. But there's lots of good stuff to learn about your body just by measuring. So we're going to do that together. We're going to do the 21-day liver cleanse that I talked about during my interview with Dr. Keisha. And we're going to do that together. It's also a really great elimination diet in general. So it'll give us all a nice reset. And then we can work on re-entry, bringing foods back in. And we're going to dial in our sleep together and work on our routines, our morning routine, mindfulness practices, all the things that are a really important part of healing. So if that's interesting to you, just go to healingrosie.com, pull up this podcast, and you can click on the application link to apply for the program, and would love to talk to you more about it and see if it's a fit. And it's going to be awesome. And I feel really excited about being able to bring something to our community that I know is going to help all of you change your lives. So I would love to see as many of you join us as possible. I believe we have 8 slots in this beta course over the very first one. We are launching in a couple of weeks, and then we will be launching new groups to go through. Maybe every month or two, we'll put a new group through. So if that speaks to you and resonates, I'd love to have you join us. And regardless of whether you want to join us in the accelerator, I hope going through this framework is helpful to you and serves you on your journey. I do want to speak a little bit about food sensitivity testing because it's a hot topic in our space. All right. So I just finished the Radical Healing Detox for Stress and Stressors Masterclass a couple months ago, interviewed lots of the top docs in our space. And universally, people said you need to do food sensitivity testing. And it's also controversial because you need to do the right kind of food sensitivity testing. I did an interview with Dr. Peter Osborne, and he said that most of the time, and he's right, he's not the only one that I've heard say this, most of the time with food sensitivity, we're measuring IgG reactions, which just says that our bodies have some kind of antibody. What we really want to be measuring is this having a negative effect on our system, right? On our immune system? Is this causing our body to attack itself in some way, not just the presence of an antibody? But he encouraged lymphocyte testing. Okay. So the company that does lymphocyte testing is ELISA. Am I getting that right, Michelle? ELISA. Yes. Mm-hmm. And they have a couple levels of tests that you can do. Mm-hmm. We are not doing it as a foundational test because, first of all, there's a lot, because of what we're doing with elimination and re-entry, we're going to be able to identify the foods that are triggers for us. But it can psychologically start messing with people to say, oh, my body's reacting to all of these foods. It can create, burn this belief, right, that we manifest over and over again, that these foods are bad for us. When the truth is that once you remove the foods for a period of time, a lot of times the body's able to heal, right? And then when you re-enter add the foods back into your diet, your body is able to tolerate them well, and you're not triggered by them. So food sensitivity testing is something that we will do kind of in phase 2. If the individual is presenting in a way where we feel like food sensitivity testing needs to be a part of what we're doing. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, Michelle, because this is something that you and I talked about together and figuring out what role food sensitivity would play in our core program. I know there's a lot of people out there who have done food sensitivity tests or have heard the importance of food sensitivity tests. And I want to make sure that we address that in this conversation.
I'm not a fan. We're probably in the minority with that. Again, it goes back to, the difference between the types of food sensitivity testing. The ELISA is the only one I would use because it does use the lymphocytes.
Tell people what that is.
So those are white blood cells, right? And again, we can measure that on the blood chemistry, right? And so how are they reacting? What's going on in your body that's causing them to be overproduced? I'm not sure exactly how they measure that, as far as foods go. I honestly have not researched it. But if we do an elimination diet, if we take things out of the major offenders, right? And then we give the body time to heal, to calm that inflammation down. And then we slowly begin to introduce things back in. You should be able to tolerate all of those foods. But when you do these tests, like, and I won't call names, but there's some direct to consumer tests people are, doing, and your body's listening to everything you tell it. So what are you saying to your body? What are you telling your body? I can't eat pineapple. I can't have, grains, whatever it is. Your body's listening. And if you tell your body that often enough, then guess what? You're not going to be able to eat those things because your body is saying, I'm going to react every time I see this. So it's harder to undo that thinking than it is to just not test and have it there to begin with. Dr. Karazian talks about not eliminating too many things. It creates what's called oral tolerance, and then you can't add anything back in. It makes it really, really difficult. So if you get this food sensitivity test and you have all these different foods that's telling you can't eat, and you eliminate all of them for an extended period of time, it's going to be very difficult to ever add those foods back in. So I think taking out things that are very offensive that we know, so conventional wheat, grains, conventional dairy, and we can have the conversation, about around the difference between conventional dairy and raw dairy, and conventional grains and more organic ancient grains, and why those are okay for you, and how to prepare them. We take out processed sugars and soy, never ever, no soy, and corn, right? So the major things, if we take out those things, we're still left with tons of food that we can eat, right? And we're not eliminating so many things. And then you heal the gut. That's it. We've got to heal the gut, bring back that balance, that beautiful balance that, the body's created with. And then you can add some of those things back in, but you never want to add back in processed sugars, right?
Right.
So let's take out the things that actually cause the problem. Okay. Non-organic corn. And I don't know if you want to, we can have this conversation another time.
Right. This is a whole other podcast.
Right. Another podcast. But the things that we're eliminating, those major inflammatory foods, you're not really going to want to add those back in. And what's left are really helpful. Right. And our body needs all kinds of different nutrients, and we want to get our nutrients from food as much as possible, rather than from a supplement. At times, supplements are necessary, and there will be supplements on the program. But we ultimately want to get our bodies to a place where it is absorbing the vitamins and the nutrients from food, because they all act and work synergistically with one another. And if you're just supplementing with one vitamin here and one mineral over there, it doesn't have all the other cofactors from all of the other vitamins and minerals it needs to actually do its job. So those are my thoughts on food sensitivity testing.
So for what it's worth, our perspective on food sensitivity testing. So visit healingrosie.com. Check out the show notes if you want links to any of the things that we've talked about. We'll do our best to provide as many links as we can to different tests. And if you are interested in learning about the optimizing labs, you can download the Healing Rosie Lab Tracker. I'm very happy for you guys to all have these resources so that you can advocate for yourself and get the help you need to optimize and get your life back. Thank you so much, Michelle, for spending time with us today, giving this. Yes, it's totally exciting, giving us this great download. And if you're interested in joining us in the accelerator, just pop over to healingrosie.com and click the link to apply, and we can have a conversation about that. So appreciate everyone for joining us, tuning in today, and we will see you soon. Bye for now. That's it for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. I hope you're feeling more empowered to overcome your flabby, foggy, and fatigued, and to reclaim your life. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any of our episodes. We have some awesome shows coming right up. I love reading your reviews and comments too. They inspire me and encourage other Rosies to hang out with us and learn all these amazing strategies for healing and living our best lives. Till next time, sister. Bye.